Okay, so the next question of what is the difference between an IEP and a 504? A 504 is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title II. And basically, it provides accommodations, only accommodations. And accommodations allow a child a level playing field. So I try to explain it in terms of environmental or physical barriers. A child who has a wheelchair, it can only ambulate with a wheelchair, but is otherwise cognitively, fine, a typical child, but just has that orthopedic injury, for instance. That child may only need a ramp to access the classroom, but then that child must do the same work as everyone else, but may have a different desk. Okay, so those are the environmental or physical accommodations. A child who has ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, might require work in chunks, smaller pieces of the work. May be able to show mastery in 10 problems rather than 20. So you're reducing the amount of work, but the mastery is the same. They may be distracted, so they'll be allowed to take a test in a quiet environment, move to another room. And they may also have extra time to complete a task because it's hard for them to focus, for instance. So those are accommodations, but they have to still do the same work as everyone else, but perhaps at a different speed, a different way, but they have to show the same mastery. An IEP is for a child who has a disability category and requires specialized instruction. So if a child has severe ADHD, so much that they really can't be accommodated with, for instance, extra time or shortened assignments, and you have to modify the work, you have to actually change the level of mastery, then you would have an IEP. So an IEP, though, is a much stronger document. It provides more services, more supports, and more protections. And when it comes to discipline, an IEP is better because in both cases, if a child is going to be suspended for more than 10 days in a school year, under both 504 and an IEP, they're entitled to a manifestation determination review, which is the acronym is MDR. And that means that the school team determines whether the child's the behavior is a manifestation of their disability. So, child who has ADHD, and especially in this climate now, says, "I'm going to shoot up the school." Well, that could be a manifestation of the disability, and if the parents can prove to the school that it was impulsive, and nothing happens things do happen, but the child doesn't get suspended or expelled. However, if a child is selling drugs, for instance, well, if the child has a 504, that child can actually be suspended without services, because most likely that's not tied into or caused by the disability. Child who has an IEP and is found selling drugs and is not a manifestation of a disability. And it would be hard even for me, representing the child, to prove that it is a manifestation of disability. There are cases where we have argued that if the child has an emotional disability and poor judgment and all that, but if it's not a manifestation of disability, that child can be long-term suspended, but must receive services. So they would be in an alternative setting, for instance, and they have to receive not only services toward their goals, but services to access the general education curriculum. They cannot be thrown out of school. They cannot be expelled. A child with a 504, yes, can be removed from school without any services. So the IEP provides protection, especially in this day and age, and we handle a lot of discipline cases. So I'd much rather have a child who has an IEP.
Awesome.